The track that you're on. He said, in the meantime, there's a guy down in Atlanta whose work you need to check out. And his name is Dr. Asa Hilliard. Well, I had heard the name, but I couldn't attach anything to it. My junior year, I think it was at Hampton, a black bookstore, much like the Black Dot bookstore where we're sitting right now, a black bookstore opened right near campus. It was called UB and US Books and Things, United Brothers and United Sisters Books and Things. Brother Khalifa was the owner, he and his wife. And so some of the books that I had seen, I remember seeing Asa Hilliard's name, but I didn't know to attach it to anything. So when he said that, I kind of just logged that in the back of my mind as data or information. I didn't know that years later I would move to Atlanta and have the opportunity to not only meet him, but to kind of come under his tutelage as it relates to excellence in education. In 2003, I went through my second initiation. The first one was with the Brothers of Kemet Nu and the African Studies Cluster. The second one was with Dr. Asa Hilliard in an organization, a black educators think tank called the Jegna Collective. And that's where we began to learn about the African tradition of excellence in education and how to reproduce that tradition. And just to give you an idea of the impact that it had on me, at the time I was still a full-time middle school language arts teacher. And in some of our meetings, like I remember he invited us over to his house, we went to his basement, and he showed us some video clips of different high-performing black schools. One of them was the Marcus Garvey School in Los Angeles, which anybody who's familiar with his work knows he used to talk about that quite a bit, where you had third grade students doing calculus. Where you had three-year-old students reciting poetry, where you had, it was just an amazing shock to the system because it was so different from what any of us were taught about the levels of human growth and development. Like my man Abraham here is a psychology major, so you're going to be exposed to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're going to be exposed to Jean Piaget and what Europeans considered the standards of human growth and development, okay? And they're going to tell you that at certain ages a child can do this, and at certain ages a child can do this, and so forth and so on down the line. Well, there was nothing in my experience to demonstrate that black children in third grade could do calculus, or that they could take apart computers and refurbish them and stuff like that, because computers, non-functioning computers were donated to the school, and they needed them. So they just made that part of the curriculum. And the students took them apart, put them together back, and made them functional. And so I'm watching these different video clips, and it's shattering everything that I had ever learned in any of those classes about what was possible. I was already, in my mind, African-centered. I was already trying to expose our children to the greatness of our history and culture. But that experience was just phenomenal. And I later met with him individually. And I told him what my plans were, that I wanted to continue to develop a curriculum, an African-centered curriculum that would be able to reach out all over the country and world and train teachers and so forth. And his background was as a psychologist. He was an educational psychologist and an educator and a phenomenal African scholar. So he was uniquely positioned in several areas, in the community and the academy, okay? And so what he did was he allowed me to present with him at a major national conference, which gave me international exposure, National Alliance of Black School Educators, NABC. He invited me to present with him.
What was that one more time?
NABC, National Alliance of Black School Educators, National Alliance of Black School Educators. And so he was just always very complimentary, of my work and encouraging of it. He endorsed my book, The Treasure Within, because when I read his book, Saber, The Reawakening of the African Mind, in one of the chapters he talked about pt2, an ancient African world, the oldest complete text in the world, and shared some of those teachings. And I was like, how can I take what he's got in this book and share it with my seventh graders in an engaging way? And that's when I took the teachings of pt2 and I wrote a story around that, where children travel back in time and they meet him and then he instructs them, and sent him the manuscript, and he loved it. and he endorsed it. For him to put his words, his stamp of approval on my work, meant a lot for several reasons. Because number one, his name went much further than mine, and what he wrote in it was very significant as well, because he said that I had captured an authentic African worldview, which is not something that's easy to come by when you consider the miseducation process that we've come through. And so that book went places that I never could have gotten to, and got in the hands of a lot of wonderful people who then invited me to different places to speak and so forth. What impressed me the most about him was he didn't just talk about the things that he talked about, he lived it. So for example, one of the concepts that he would talk about is medu-nefer and medu-necher. Medu-nefer is good speech, medu-necher is God's speech or divine speech, okay? Well, I saw him demonstrate this in a situation where he was confronted at a conference here in Atlanta. After he spoke, he had a question and answer session. Somebody confronted him in a way, it was a black person, in a way that could have been very volatile, like, questioning his commitment to our liberation and different things like that. I mean, it could have been very, very ugly. But the way that he handled it was with such grace and dignity. I think the average black person probably would have cussed this person out, and it would have got real, real ugly. But they say that wrestling with a person who is adept at judo or aikido is like wrestling with the wind, because you can never really get a grasp on them. They're using your own energy against you. And so he didn't feed into that energy at all. The person was accusing him of different things, and he just said, it's not so. But he didn't get all upset about it. And so after a while, he just stopped. And so I'm watching that from a distance. And it was very instructive to me in terms of how to carry myself in public, especially at a time when there are a lot of volatile things going on in public spaces and online and social media spaces as it relates to how we carry ourselves and so forth. So I learned so much from him about the rigor of our scholarship, the rigor of our research. He was big on making sure you do your homework, because he said so many of our people have microphones